Hey guys, it's Julian here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make banging explosive techno kicks. So I've actually just dropped a techno kick sample pack on my Bandcamp. The link is at the top of the description. You can check it out in there. Basically, what it has is it's got 50 techno kicks. You actually heard a few of them in the intro to this video for just $10. So if you're looking for like a good library of kicks to use to either like work on tracks or just kind of like play around with, this is definitely a pretty good option. Like I said, it's just $10. It's in the description. You can check it out there. And I also just dropped my year mix for 2018. So it's got a bunch of tracks in there that came out this year that I really liked. A bunch of cool techno tracks. So that's also in the description, and you can check it out. And yeah, let's get started. So today, like I said, I'm going to be showing you how to make a banging techno kick from scratch. What I have in front of me is a 909 kick. Sounds like that, and we're going to be turning that into a kick similar to the ones that you heard in the intro. So, to start off with, I just want to explain to you why we're using a 909. For one, a 909 is a pretty popular sample. Like, most DAWs come with a few 909 samples, and it's a really good kick to start with because, as you can hear, it's very harmonically rich. And so basically what we're going to be doing here is kind of like shaping this harmonically using some saturation and a few other methods, and then putting it through the whole reverb chain to get that like low rumbly kick. But yeah, it's really good to start with something like this because it just gives you a lot of space to play around. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab a saturator. I'm going to put it on there, and then I'm going to click this little button to open up these controls, and we're going to change this color mode to the wave shaper. The reason why I'm using the wave shaper is because it just kind of allows you to use these controls and go a little bit deeper than just like turning up the drive and playing around with these knobs. So the first thing that I'm going to do here, ironically enough, is turn up the drive a little bit. I'm not going to go too crazy, but you can hear it just kind of beefs it up a little bit, and then I'm going to start turning up some of these controls. And to be honest with you, with these controls, you kind of just have to play around with it and get a feel for what sounds the best. Like, that's kind of the cool thing about this technique, is it's not really so much about being like super precise and knowing really what you're trying to get exactly going into it. It's more about just kind of like putting a sample into this and playing around with the controls until you just end up with something that you like. And if you do it for long enough, which really isn't that long, doesn't take that much time to dial this in, as you'll see in a moment, but if you do it, you should find something cool. Like, this usually is a pretty fruitful method. So I'm going to start playing around with some of these. Okay, that's pretty good. So you can hear now, if I turn off the saturator and turn it back on, it's a lot more powerful. It's a lot more big sounding, I guess you could say. It's, yeah, just really hitting nicely, and it's a little bit more gritty as well. Like I said, this is kind of why you want like something like a 909 where it's got all that harmonic content that when you put it into the saturator, it's going to sound really cool. The next thing that I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go into this simpler that I have the kick in. And this is why you probably want to use a simpler for this as opposed to just putting it in like an audio track, because I'm going to go in here and I'm going to add a pitch envelope. So if you don't know, a pitch envelope is a very popular technique for any kind of like drum synthesis. In this case, we're not synthesizing a kick from scratch necessarily, but you can still add it to a sample. And what it's going to do is it'll add a bunch of punch on your sound. Like, it'll make it hit harder. It's a really good technique, actually. Like, if you're trying to make your kick hit harder, try adding a slight pitch envelope to it. And I'll kind of show you how you do it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn up the amount a bit, and I'm just going to listen to it, and you'll kind of see. So you can hear what this does is it gives it that really hard kind of attack like you want from one of these kicks. With these kind of kicks, you need that really powerful attack. Like, one of the #1 critiques I have when people send me techno tracks and when they send me, you know, kicks they've made and stuff, is that it just doesn't really have that like super powerful impact. Like, if you referenced it with like a reference track, you would hear that it just doesn't really hit that hard. So adding this pitch envelope, as you can see, is a really good way to do that. So I'll keep playing around with it, and you can mess around with the saturator a little bit once you do this too. Like, sometimes I like to turn up that period because it makes it a little bit clickier. But yeah, so that's pretty good for now. So you can hear, this is a big step up from what we started with. And And yeah, so the next thing that I'm going to do here is we're going to set up the rumbly sort of kick thing that you hear on a lot of techno kicks. So the way you do this is you bring in an audio effect rack. This is the way I do it at least. And what you're going to do is make 2 chains. So right click, hit create chain, right click, hit create chain. I'm pretty sure if you're on a Mac, you like click with 2 fingers or something. I'm not sure. I'm on Windows. But yeah, basically create 2 chains in there. And then what you're going to do is we're going to name one of them dry, and we'll name the second one wet. On the wet chain, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some reverb on there, and we're going to turn the dry wet up 100%, so it's just completely wet because this is the wet chain, so there's no reason to have any of the dry signal coming through. I'm going to turn up the decay time a little bit. I'm going to change this quality to high. And yeah, so that's what it should be sounding like at this point. I'll turn the wet chain down a little bit. That's what it sounds like on its own. And as you can hear, this is technically a reverb kick. It's a kick that has reverb on it, but it doesn't quite have that nice kind of like warehousey sound. So the next thing that we're going to add to get that is this amp. And what we're going to do is we're going to put that after the reverb. We're going to keep the output set to mono, so it's just a mono signal. With these kicks, even though they do have a reverb on them, you don't want them to be super stereo because the rumble is really just happening in the low end. So yeah, you just don't want like stereo stuff like that in the low end. It'll just make your mix really messy, especially when you're making like techno, which is so much made for like the club and made to be really like just hitting super hard. Yeah, you just don't want to have things in stereo. So that's why I have this in mono. And then we'll maybe turn up the bass a little bit. Give it a little bit more gain. Maybe I'll turn up the presence. And yeah, so you can hear what's happening now is we're getting the rumble. Like if you listen to just the low end or listen just for the low end, you can hear that really nice rumble in there, but there's also a bit of high end. So the next thing that we're going to do is grab an EQ8, and then I'm just going to take this and make like a low pass filter. So we'll cut off, usually to about there is good. You can also do one of those kind of curves. And then if we play this with the dry signal, there we go. We have a pretty nice rumbly kick. And at this point, you know, you can kind of go through and start working with the wave shaper a little bit more. A lot of these settings that I did to start off with were just kind of like to get things going. Like, you know, this is kind of how you always do it. Like, you start out with something and you want to get the creative flow going, and then you go back and refine it later once things are a little bit more hashed out. So yeah, that sounds pretty good. And again, the key is just to get the perfect balance between the dry signal and the wet signal. Cool, and we can also play around with pitching the kick a little bit. Like maybe if I put it down. Yeah, that's good. Cool. So then the next thing that I'm going to do here is just kind of like some extra stuff at the end of the chain. So I will close this out so we just see these two. And then I'm going to grab a saturator and an EQ8. And then with the EQ8, I'm just going to start doing a little bit of like kind of boosting and cutting to kind of get it closer to how I want. Maybe we'll turn up the mids a little bit, because I really like getting those like powerful, like right around there, that kind of impact. So the EQ8 is just kind of like shaping it a little bit and making it fit a little bit more with the sound that I have in my head. And then the saturator, which goes before that actually, is just going to be to give it a little bit more texture. I'm going to turn up this drive a bit. We'll turn this down here, and I'll turn it to sinoid fold. So if you don't know, these are just the color modes on the saturator. The analog clip is the one that comes by default. If you turn it on sinoid fold, it's just a little bit more powerful. And yeah, so this is sounding pretty good. I'll turn down the wet signal a little bit more as well, because the saturator's kind of bringing it out. And yeah, so there we go. So we started with this. and we ended up with this. So not bad. And what I really wanted to do with this video was just kind of show you, like, you can start with almost anything and end up with a really cool techno kick. And it's really just a matter of kind of like knowing how to play with the sounds. Like, the reason why I like using saturation so much is because it's not just that it's distorting the sound, but it's like really, and I say this a lot, it's really like the most kind of scientific way, I feel, to sort of like shape your sound. Like, you're literally just going and adding harmonics to on top of the sound, and then sort of shaping that using the different controls on the saturator. And again, if you kind of get out of the mindset of like the saturator is just for distortion, which has a certain connotation to it. Like when you think of a saturator or you think of distortion, you think of like really heavy sounds, like really hard-hitting sounds. And if you kind of get out of that mindset and more just view it as this really powerful sound shaping tool, yeah, it can come up with some really cool stuff. And again, putting a kick like this into it can make some really good results. So that's going to be it for today, guys. Like I said, I just want to show you some techniques to kind of make techno kicks out of almost anything. Sorry about that. The camera cut out for a second. Like I was saying, that's going to be it for today, guys. So you can get that sample pack that I told you about in the description. It's the first link, and you can check it out. Like I said, it's 50 techno kicks, very similar to this one. You heard a bunch of them in the intro for just $10, so make sure to check that out if you're looking for some more kicks. You can also check out my year mix for 2018, which is in the description right underneath the sample pack. And yeah, thank you again, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another tutorial.